Welcome to Blessing Generations, and we're excited to start this seminar. And you know, it's always interesting every time we have a seminar because people come for all kinds of different reasons. And I know that probably there are people that have been anticipating this seminar, waiting to come, excited about it, and other people just heard about it a few days ago. And we always have people that somebody drug you here, somebody paid for you to be here, your mother-in-law, your wife, a parent, somebody said you're coming. And one thing that we found is that even though people come for all kinds of different reasons, we found one thing's consistent, and that is God brought you here. He has a plan for you. It may be totally different than your plan, but God has something He wants to do this weekend, and if you'll open your heart and just allow Him to do it, we find incredible things happen in people's lives. Now, I'm going to be presenting this seminar from a biblical perspective, and I realize that we may have people here from all kinds of different worldviews, all kinds of different backgrounds, and it's really not possible to present something objectively. So I'm just going to present it from the way I see it, and if you need to translate it into a different worldview or a different understanding of life, I'll give you permission to translate it into any way you see it if you give me permission to just present it from my perspective. Is that okay? Will that work for everybody? Okay, great. Well, what we're going to be talking about this weekend is, as the name would indicate, blessing generations. And would it stand to reason that it would be God's plan and God's idea that every generation ought to be a little bit more blessed than the last generation? And, if you put this in a spiritual context, God's plan is to bless every generation. Satan's plan is to curse every generation. So there's always opposites that are taking place. So we're going to look at how is it that we release greater and greater blessing in every generation. The idea being that your children really ought to be blessed just because they're your children. You know what we find oftentimes is that many people are having to go through recovery programs. And when you look at recovery programs, what are people recovering from, basically? By and large, people are actually recovering from their childhood experience. And so our goal would be that your children don't have to recover from their experience with you. The idea is that your children would be blessed as a result of their experience with you and would be launched like an arrow toward a target. And that's sort of the idea. And so we live in a continuum. All of us have come from parents. Many of us have children or will have children. And so we're in the midst of a succession of generations coming from the past and going on into the future. And so what we want to look at during this time in this seminar is how do we terminate cursing of generations and how do we accelerate and release blessing of generations. I want to just start with looking at a scripture, Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 16. We call these Ancient Paths seminars, and that name comes from this scripture that says, "Stand by the ways and see and ask for the ancient paths where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your soul." So this word ancient caught my attention, and it's the Hebrew word olam. It doesn't mean just old or old-fashioned. It actually means universal, timeless, eternal, perpetual, from before time, or even out of eternity. And that word really, that phrase really grabbed me, out of eternity. So we're talking about ways of God that just cause life to function on planet Earth. Universal principles. In the physical realm, it would be things like gravity. Gravity affects everybody. Gravity doesn't care whether you're young or old, what color skin you have, what part of the planet you were born on. Gravity just affects everybody exactly the same. So when we're talking about ancient paths, we're talking about principles of life that just cause life to function. Now I want to look over in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, and this is sort of a foundational principle here of God's plan for people on planet Earth. And now this is a promise that was given to Abraham. It says in verse 3, "I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Now, the thing I like about that is it doesn't just say all the individuals of the earth, it says all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So a family is a basic unit that was established on planet Earth. And God said, my plan is to bless every family on planet Earth. So if you think about your family, the family you grew up in, or perhaps now you're married, you have children, the family that you're now a parent in perhaps, what's God's plan for your family? Well, it says right here, his plan is to bless your family. So that's God's purpose. God's plan is to bless your family. And again, the opposite would be Satan's plan is to curse your family. So let me talk for a moment about those words, bless and curse. The way that we're going to use them this weekend, when people hear those words, all kinds of different ideas may come to the mind in terms of what does it really mean to be blessed, or what does it really mean to be cursed. When people hear that word curse, that's a very strong word. Sometimes people think of witchcraft or, powerful types of curses being pronounced over people. But really this weekend, we're using these words in a very, very simple way. To bless, if you look that up, the biblical definitions are these. In the Hebrew, the word is baruch. And it simply means literally to kneel in front of someone, or the spiritual connotation is to empower to prosper. So when you bless someone, what you're actually doing is empowering them to prosper. And when we use that word prosper, we're not just talking about finances, but we're talking about every aspect of life. So when you empower somebody to prosper, when you bless them, you potentially empower their relationships to succeed, to thrive, to do well. Their finances to succeed, to thrive, to do well. Their physical health, every aspect of their life to thrive, succeed, do well. That's to bless. In the Greek, the word bless is eulogia, from which we get our English word eulogy that we oftentimes read or speak at someone's funeral. It literally simply means to speak well of. So when you're blessing someone, you're speaking well of them. Now the opposite then, to curse someone, is to not speak well of them, or to speak ill of them, or evil of them. Or if to bless means to empower to prosper, then to curse means to disable from prospering, or to disempower someone from prospering. So in a family, at any moment in time, we can empower other family members to prosper or disempower other members of the family to prosper. So we can bless them or we can curse them. Now what I find in most families is that most people are not at any particular point in time purposefully trying to disempower other family members from prospering. Most parents don't wake up on any given day and say to themselves, gee, I wonder what I could do today to curse my children. Wonder what I could do today that would disempower my children from prospering in their future adult lives. Most people are not thinking that way. So, in order for that type of disempowerment or cursing to happen, it has to happen through blindness. It happens through things that people don't see. It happens through areas in which people are blind. So we will disempower children or disempower or literally curse other family members in areas where we're blind, where we don't see that. We don't realize that that's what's happening. Now, blessing, it said in that scripture in Jeremiah 6:16, it said, when we walk in God's ancient paths, it brings the soul into peace. I began thinking about that, and I found that blessing is a powerful factor that brings something on the inside to rest, brings things into peace. And as I began to think about that, I discovered that blessing and cursing in families will impact especially two critical areas. Will impact identity and destiny. Now, identity is simply this. Let me define the way we'll use those terms this weekend, identity and destiny. Identity means the answer to this question, who am I? Who is this me? So every one of us have to relate to a me in here every day of our lives. And destiny is, why am I here? What's my purpose? Where am I going? So identity is the answer to the question, who am I? Destiny is the answer to the question, why am I here? Now, again, if you put that in a spiritual context, God has an answer to those questions. Satan has an answer to those questions. If you look at what is Satan's answer to the questions, who am I and why am I here? Well, his answer goes something like this. You're nobody. You're nothing. You shouldn't be here. There's something wrong with you. As a matter of fact, you're a mistake. You don't belong. Nobody loves you. Nobody will ever love you. Nobody wanted you to be here. You're ugly. You're stupid. You're unspiritual. You'll never amount to anything. If you have a destiny, you'd probably blow it anyway. So you're just here taking up food, air, and water on the planet, marking time until the day you die with no real purpose. That's Satan's answer. Now, God's answer is just the opposite. God's answer is, I love you. I planned for you. You're exactly the right person in the right place at the right time. I knew what you'd look like. I knew you'd be a boy. I knew you'd be a girl. You're right on time, the right person in the right place. You have exactly everything you need to accomplish your purpose. And God said, I have a destiny for you. I have a plan for you. I have a purpose for you, and I've well equipped you to accomplish your purpose. As a matter of fact, nobody else can do what you were put on the planet to do. Nobody else can be a father to your children. Nobody else can be a mother to your children. Nobody else can be a daughter to your parents or a wife to your husband. I've equipped you to do what nobody else can do, and you have unique experiences in your life that equip you to accomplish certain things on planet Earth that nobody else can accomplish. God says, your mother only carried you for 9 months in her womb. I carried you in my spirit for thousands of years. And right at the right time, I released you on planet Earth. You're here because of a purpose and a destiny, right on time, loved, valuable. You have everything you need. Now, these are opposite messages. And what I've found is that both God and Satan use human agency to impart their message. As a matter of fact, I discovered that it was so important to God to get His message of blessing, identity, and destiny to you at certain critical times in life that He put some very specific agents in your life to ensure that you get His message and not Satan's message. I found that there are certain times in life that are a little bit more critical than other times when the heart is open, where you can receive a message of identity and destiny, and that at those critical times in life, God put agents there to ensure that you'd get His message. Those agents are not called teachers. They're called parents. Parents. And so if parents do nothing else regarding their children, the primary thing that they were designed to do is to be God's imparters of identity and destiny. So when we go back to blessing and cursing, the way we're going to use these terms is like this. Blessing is simply God's mechanism of imparting identity and destiny into your life. Cursing is Satan's mechanism of imparting his message of identity and destiny into your life. And both God and Satan primarily will use human agency. And so in families, at any moment in time, parents are really prophets. They're prophesying either life or death into the lives of their children. In other words, they're speaking things forth and imparting identity and destiny into the lives of their children. And again, many times, parents don't realize the power they have in the lives of their children. And these messages are not just coming through words, but they're coming through attitudes, they're coming through voice intonation, they're coming through actions, they're coming through the way we interact in a family. And so, for example, in areas where parents are blind, they can impart to their sons or daughters Satan's message of identity and destiny. For example, if a child fails at something, the parent might say, "You'll never amount to anything." Now, whose message is that? So that's Satan's message. Many times in frustration or anger, parents will declare things into the lives of children, will speak things, "You're stupid," or "If you keep acting that way, you'll end up in jail. You keep wearing clothes like that, you'll probably end up pregnant." These are proclamations that are coming out of the mouth of parents, but yet if you look many times, the impartation is worthlessness, lack of destiny, no purpose. And parents don't realize that they were imparting that, and it's actually creating a wound on the inside of the son or the daughter and depositing deep on the inside Satan's message. And parents didn't realize that. What we'll be talking about this weekend is 7 critical times when God intended for impartation of blessing to take place. But what I began to see when I began to look in the Bible, and not only in the Bible, in the Hebrew culture, but in many different cultures around the world, what I began to observe was this, that God placed ceremonies, customs, various protective mechanisms in culture that would ensure at these 7 critical times that we're going to talk about, that people would receive an impartation of God's message and not an impartation of Satan's message. And what has happened in our Western culture is that so-called civilized culture, what's actually happened is the enemy has really ripped right out of our culture most of the protective mechanisms, the ceremonies, the traditions, the things that have been in place that would ensure that impartation of blessing would happen at those critical times. Those have been ripped right out of our culture. And now, instead, nothing is there. And guess who fills vacuums? When there's nothing there, oftentimes Satan is able to impart his message, and people don't realize it. So we're going to be talking about how can we re-implement safeguards in our culture, traditions, customs, things that would cause children to naturally be blessed at those critical times in life. That's what we're going to look at through the course of this seminar. You know, it's incredible how generationally cursing and blessing impacts people, how things pass down from one generation to the next. I want to just read you a true story about 2 families right here from the United States of America. And this is 2 families that lived 200 years ago. Listen to this true story of 2 American families. It says, Max Jukes was an atheist who married a godless woman. Some 560 descendants were traced. Remember that number, 560. Okay, so here's a man, Max Jukes, 560 descendants over 200 years. Out of these descendants, 310 died as paupers or in poverty. 150 became criminals, 7 of them murderers. 100 were known to be drunkards, and more than half the women were prostitutes. The descendants of Max Jukes cost the United States government more than $1.25 million in 19th century dollars. That's probably more than $250 million today in current prices. Jonathan Edwards, on the other hand, was a contemporary of Max Jukes. He was a committed Christian who gave God first place in his life. He married a godly young lady, and some 1,394 descendants were traced. Now, out of these 1,394 descendants, we're going to hear what happened to them. But remember how many Max had? 560. Jonathan, 1,394. 2.5 times numerical increase in Jonathan's life over Max's life. Now, out of Jonathan's descendants, 295 graduated from college, of whom 13 became college presidents, 65 became professors, 3 were elected as United States senators, 3 as state governors, others were sent as ministers to foreign countries, 30 were judges, 100 were lawyers, 1 the dean of an outstanding law school, 56 practiced as physicians, 1 was the dean of a medical school, 75 became officers in the military, 100 were well-known missionaries, preachers, and prominent authors. Another 80 held some form of public office, of whom 3 were mayors of large cities, 1 was the controller of the U.S. Treasury, and another was vice president of the United States. Not one of the descendants of the Edwards family was ever a liability to the government. Now, isn't that a contrast in blessing and cursing over 200 years of time? And what you see when you hear something like that is you realize that there was seed on the inside of this man, Max Jukes, that was so potent that it apparently carried down generation after generation after generation and devastated generations of people. On the other hand, there was seed on the inside of this man, Jonathan Edwards, that was so powerful that it also passed down from generation to generation to generation and made it almost impossible for his descendants not to fulfill a powerful destiny for which each one of them was placed on planet Earth. Now, when we hear a story like that, some of us think, in our own history, we look back and say, oh my goodness, it's Max Jukes all the way. He was probably my great-great-grandfather himself. And we think, what chance do I have? Well, the good news is the very fact that you're sitting here at this seminar today is probably indicative of the fact that God picked you out in this generation to change this. That you'll see something change from your generation forward. You get to be the first Jonathan Edwards, perhaps, in a long lineage of people that have been in a Max Jukes type of lineage. And for others of us, we look back and we see Jonathan Edwards types of people in our background. And we realize we're riding on a wave of blessing that we didn't work for. That somebody else has sown seed that's made life very, very simple and easy for us in certain areas of life, where we aren't going to have to fight battles that perhaps other people need to fight that have had different seed that's come down from past generations. So whichever way it is, what we realize at this point in time is God is trying to establish and do something in your generation for the future, that you can take seed and allow God to deposit seed in your life that's going to impact your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. For many generations, people will look back upon your life and say, thank God that my great-great-grandfather got hold of something in his generation and deposited seed into his children that passed on down and made it easy for me to fulfill my destiny in my generation. That part excites me when I think about that, the potential of what God will do even here this weekend to impact our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren for many generations. Now, in this seminar, we're going to be all together here in a large group like this for part of the seminar, and then we're going to be breaking up into small groups. And so we're going to have our first small group time in just a couple minutes. Sometimes when people hear small groups, they get fearful. Well, what are they going to do? You know, are they going to force us to do something we don't want to do in a small group? They're going to make us say something or pray something or do something? And I just want to set your heart at rest. The purpose of the small group is not to force you or make you do anything. It's just an opportunity, to make an opportunity available to you for you to allow God to do whatever you want to let Him do in your life. So there will be things that are shared in that small group. There will be things that people will pray in that small group. But I just want to remove the pressure from you. You're not going to have to do anything. You're free to just allow yourself to share whatever you want to share, to ask for prayer for whatever you want prayer for. And the goal is not for anybody to pressure you or force you or push you into doing anything that you don't want to do. Does that make sense? So the purpose of the small groups is just an opportunity that you can take advantage of to allow God to do things in your life to whatever extent you would like that to happen. So we're going to go ahead and go to our first small group in just a moment. I'd like to invite the seminar coordinators to come back up now, and they'll share with you the mechanism for releasing you into your small groups. So let's have the seminar coordinators come on back up right now.